Hello, everybody. It's Speakers UK. This is Stops, and Rob is in the car, which is why I am hosting, and he's just commenting because he's got boring couple of minutes, and we thought let's use the time more efficiently and do a quick rundown of a video that came up, and that's why we're going like this way, just to spend some time with you guys and tell you a little bit about what we thought about this video. Hello, Rob in the car.
Hey, Stops. Good afternoon, I guess it is. Good evening, wherever you may be. Thanks so much for hosting on my channel. Because as Stops says, I'm driving. I've got about a 4-hour drive back from a client, which has been quite quiet over the COVID period. So it's good to get some work. But as Stops said, well, I'm in the car. And Stops had a bit of time. So we thought, hey, let's critique one of these Dawah is easy videos with this fellow who thinks he's making good arguments, and I think we'll go through it now and show you why these are very weak indeed. So I won't be able to. All I'll be able to do is to ask Stops to stop the video because I can't see the chat. I can't see anything. All I'll be doing is hearing the audio.
Okay. And if anybody happens to be live right now on a Tuesday, then just come on in. If you want me to stop, just somehow type in one enter or something, then that will catch my attention, and then I will stop the video. Otherwise, it's just going to be between Rob and me. So this is the video. This is the guy. I don't know if you remember him. It's quite weak what he did last time, but you never know. I haven't watched it yet. I have no idea what's coming my way. So we just need to play it by ear, see what happens. All right, Rob, you ready?
I'm ready. I've watched it, so I know what's happening.
Okay, then I'll start it now.
Thank you for watching. I saw you talking with someone, my friend. We haven't had a conversation, have we?
No.
Okay. And because sometimes people think this is acting or something, but no.
That's no way.
Okay, that's fine. And while we were setting up the camera, I asked you a few questions, and you said your name is Adam. Is that right?
That's right. Yes, Adam. Yeah.
Adam, and Adam, you're an atheist. Is that right?
Humanist.
A humanist, but you don't believe there's a God.
No.
Okay.
Let's stop
and
well, obviously, if he's an atheist, he doesn't believe in a God. So, I mean, stating the obvious, I don't think this guy knows what a humanist is. He kind of I'm assuming he just knows, well, it kind of works with an atheist. But a humanist, you could be a humanist and to some degree, you could be a humanist and some version of a theist, right? Believing in something else. So it's not exclusively an atheist. But you notice as well, just as a tactic here, what the Dawah people do is they are taught to ask the person's name because, hey, when somebody says your name consistently, you are more likely, you like to hear your own name. We like to hear and talk about ourselves. And when somebody else lets us do that or calls us by a name, our defenses are slightly lowered. So this is just another tactic that you'll notice all the Dawah people do.
Okay, and the thing is, you can be a humanist and some sort of a theist, but you can never be a Muslim and a humanist, because the inequality, the misogyny in the Quran, you cannot be a humanist with that. So that is impossible. So there needs to be a very specific type of theist before you can be a humanist. But yeah.
Yeah. Good point.
Okay.
also, what we said, I know you noticed you were talking with somebody, and you said to them that you've been to Pakistan.
That is correct. Yeah. Yeah.
You've travelled all over Pakistan.
Yes. Yeah. Well, northern Pakistan. Yeah.
Northern Pakistan, yes.
And northern Afghanistan as well.
Okay, northern Afghanistan, northern Pakistan. Are you from England yourself, Adam?
I am. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And what sort of work do you do, Adam? Or
I'm partially retired now, but I worked as a chef for many, many years. Went to college and trained to be a chef, and I've worked in old people's homes and hospitals, and also private catering.
okay, right. And you don't believe in God?
No.
Okay, fine. You're a humanist, you're atheist, essentially.
Yeah, humanist. Yeah. I prefer the term humanism. I think
It's also very loud.
Humanist
now,
or
just turn it
agnostic
down
is a term that people use as well.
Sorry.
It just became a lot louder now for some reason. I don't know if it's just me or whether there's other people viewing as well. So I've just turned myself down a little bit.
Well, I can take it down a notch. Remember,
I'm
I've cranked it
fine,
all
I'm
the
fine.
way up.
Yeah, no, leave it up because it's easier to bring down than to try and bring up. So leave it like that.
Okay.
That's cool.
Yeah, but surely I always thought an agnostic is someone who's not sure. Whereas
Someone's not sure whether there is a God or not, because really, atheist is a term that's cannot be applied, really, because no one can prove that there is no God. So really,
Exactly.
all atheists are really agnostics.
No, stop there. Stop. That's nonsense. An atheist is not an agnostic. Atheist and agnostic are, in my view at least, mutually exclusive terms. That's my personal view. An agnostic is somebody who is unsure. They're undecided on the proposition that God exists. An atheist either lacks that belief, if you want to go that way, or my view is that they disbelieve a God of God. So you can't be an atheist and agnostic from my point of view, unless you're going to claim agnosticism is a knowledge claim, but that has some problems with it. So agnosticism to me is I'm undecided on the proposition, and therefore that wouldn't make me an atheist. That wouldn't make me an atheist. Yeah.
And the same thing goes for a theist, of course. It doesn't make sense. So in my eyes, we should do away with this whole term, or totally redefine it. That's also a possibility.
Well, I think,
but like what he's doing now, no.
Yeah, exactly. What he's doing, I think, is no good. I think there is a place for this, in the sense that, in my view at least, you can have three positions on any proposition. If somebody says anything to you, hey, I think the Earth goes around the sun, you can accept it, you can reject it, or you can be undecided. And to me, the agnostic is the undecided position. And so if you did away with that, you'd have to label the undecided something else.
Okay, and if you go the etymological way, then it's because of gnostic, the gnosos, the knowledge from the Greek, then it's something different. But either way, you can argue your case, whichever way it is. But I think in future it is going to shift away from all the original meanings, and it is going to become undecided, which I think makes a lot more sense than any of the other possibilities. Anyway, so yeah.
And it's much
And
harder.
by the way, Rob,
harder
there
to find
are watchers. There are people in the live chat watching us. There's 1,500 people. No, there's 8 people, but it's great. So it's nice that people are keeping an eye out, and there are people who are sitting on a Tuesday afternoon and think, hey, let's watch these two, see how they talk nonsense about, how they trash this video. Yeah.
Well, critique it. I like to say.
Critique it. Well, with this guy, I don't know. I don't call this critiquing anymore. I've never heard anything useful come out of this mouth. So, all right.
Then again, in a way, I would say an atheist is someone who rejects the idea of God. But you've got to believe in it before you can reject it. Right. So that's why I prefer the term humanism.
Okay, you're a humanist, essentially. Most people would say you're atheist or agnostic, as I said. You don't believe there's a God?
No.
Okay, that's okay. In common language, it's atheist, but agnostic is more accurate.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, as I said to you, I'll prove to you God exists, and really there are 4 proofs.
Excuse me? I don't think he even understands what the word proof means. I'll prove to you that God exists. This is amazing, this claim. I don't know how people can make this. We're in the 21st century, and nobody should be that ignorant. You should learn at school that you cannot prove something without like really empirical data, value, something that you can really validate. You can't. So he can't prove anything. I can make some claims, and I can appeal to your whatever emotions or something, but you can't prove this. So this is.
But not
crazy.
only that stops. If he's going to use that label, prove, well, you've got to ask him, what does he mean by that? Does he mean a mathematical proof? In which case, the only thing he could bring is some sort of mathematical argument, right? Or does he mean something about the preponderance of evidence, which is normally what people mean? So with the Dawah, people are not particularly, most of them are not particularly sophisticated. And so I think at these points, for people who are watching, if you encounter a Dawah person, one of the things that's always going through my mind is, what do you mean by that? And they need to explain, what do they mean by proof? Because either we're going to accept it and go, okay, that's what you mean, but then we're going to hold them to the same standard, or we're going to reject what they mean by it and say, no, I don't accept that. That's not what it means. Here's what it means, whatever the case is. So either we accept it and hold them to the standard, or we just say to them, well, no, I don't accept that. Here's what it's commonly referred to. But again, you'll notice that the atheist fellow doesn't do that. And I think, that's the bigger critique. And to be fair, he's probably just a member of the public. He's not like one of us that have had a lot of experience doing this. And so you'll hear him throughout this video go along with a lot of what this guy says, where in fact he should be stopping. And if it was you and I, we would be stopping like we are now a lot to get clarification, to get a solid argument.
Okay, yeah.
proofs,
Okay.
Adam, and the 4 proofs of these. First proof is it's cause and effect, or causality, technically called the cosmological argument,
Yeah.
which is saying that everything that exists must have existed because of a cause.
Yeah.
And the creator doesn't need a cause because the creator is has always existed, and that would seem illogical. However, we know now that space and time are linked together in the universe, and if there is a being who is outside the universe, he's outside our time frame, and if he's outside our time frame, he may be outside time altogether, and therefore he doesn't need a cause. If that makes sense.
It does, but then I would say, why does he need us?
Okay, that's fine. Why does he need us? Okay, I'll explain that in a moment.
Talk about that a little bit.
Second piece of evidence is the teleological
Hello?
argument, or the design.
Can you hear me?
Did you say something? I'm just
Stops.
laughing. Yes.
Yeah, sorry. It might be my poor signal here, because that might drop out along the way. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just laughing.
Yeah. Let's just go through the first one, right? First, it's cause and effect. I mean, you could link that to a particular model of the cosmology, but cosmology isn't necessarily about that in and of itself. But put that aside. You know, he's defining his God as something that does not have a cause. And a response I would have is, okay, what's the argument that something that is non-teleological cannot have, is uncaused? In other words, something like, for example, the quantum vacuum could have existed eternally. We don't know if that's the case, but I don't see any reason why that can't be the case. And if you can say that that's your God, and hey, everything needs a cause except my God, because he's outside of the universe, well, you define him that way. You need to bring the argument why that's necessary and why he could be the only possible solution to that. And of course, I don't think this guy could remotely do that.
No, it's just special pleading. Yeah, but the other thing, what he's doing basically is just saying, well, I would like my God to exist, and therefore the universe exists, and therefore my God exists. That's all he's doing. There's nothing
And my
else.
God is very
There's
special,
just-
right? My God
Yeah.
doesn't need to, be caused. It's an uncaused cause, literally. And that's the way I've defined it. Okay? But why should I accept that? Why should I accept that that's a particular necessary attribute of a God? Because you could have some other creature, or it could be an infinite regress. I don't see a logical contradiction with an infinite regress. It's just that it's just like it's against people's intuition. Well, a lot of things are unintuitive. That doesn't mean that they aren't likely to be true. Or indeed,
Yeah, and it's not
if they
very
are,
useful.
yeah. And if they are, then you need to demonstrate that they are false. Or you need to bring a probabilistic argument, which is what he's going to try and do with fine-tuning.
But anyway, this is as far away from proof as is possible, because this is just vacuous claims. That's all he's making. Okay,
Yeah.
let's listen to the next one.
Argument, which is saying that the fine-tuning of the universe
Oh, God.
points to intelligence in the design, and the intelligence in the design would point to an intelligent designer.
Okay, he just makes another claim. He says that there is such a thing as fine-tuning. Now, number one, not only is there no fine-tuning, you cannot show this in any way, but I can show the opposite, that it's not. And the other thing is that if there were fine-tuning, it would negate the capabilities of this God and would show the incompetence, that it requires such a thing as fine-tuning. So there's so many problems with this argument, it's amazing.
Yeah, you will hear him expand on it a little bit now. And I think he'll I don't know if he does it in this video. I can't remember actually, because I watched another one of his recently, whether he tries to appeal to a Roger Penrose. But if he does, we'll point out where that's not necessarily the case anyway.
I've got a question from the chat here, from the live chat. Would you be open to a nice series of debates on either of our channels? Yeah, sure, always, no problem. Just tell us where, when, how. No problem. We're always into dialogues. We always want to, get into contact with people and talk about things. Absolutely no problem. Okay, let's continue.
And we would say that's again the creator. The third piece of evidence, to keep it short, Adam, is that throughout history there have been some incredibly good people. I will come back to your question in a moment. There have been incredibly good people. These people had good, honest, decent lives. At some point in their lives, they claimed that God had spoken with them.
Yeah.
They went and out and gave this message, Adam.
But not all good people need that sort of prompt. I mean, the Buddha didn't believe in God, and he was a very good person, surely.
Buddha did talk about the great soul and uniting with the great soul, which essentially is
enough.
God.
Yeah.
But today, someone can be a Buddhist and believe there's no God, and can be a Buddhist and believe there's no God. I agree with you. As far as Buddhists-
We'd have to ask Buddhists, but I don't think that's the case. I don't think you'd be a Buddhist and believe in a God as they understand a God. And if you're going to use a vacuous definition of God, which is anything that somebody wants to define, well, then it has no meaning. But if by God you mean some sort of mind, intelligence that's massively or omnipotent, then Buddhists, as far as I can tell, they wouldn't believe in that. But they can't have it both ways. Buddhists can't either believe in God and not believe in God. That would be contradictory.
This is a bit silly, I think. Okay.
Today a concern. However, Buddha himself did talk about the great soul that we unite with the great soul and so on.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, these people, as I said, throughout history were incredibly good people. They led very good lives. At some stage, they said God spoke with them in some form. They went out and gave this message. For giving this message, they were persecuted and their followers were persecuted.
Yeah. Sure.
So the question is, these people who we refer to as messengers of God or prophets of God, why did they do this? Did they do it only because, number one, they were altruistic, which means they wanted good for society?
Yeah.
Okay. Which means essentially they were lying, but they just wanted people to have a better life.
Yeah.
Or did they do it because they're altruistic to help society? Were they deluded? Is the second possibility, which essentially means that they weren't mentally normal. And did they do it for that reason, which would go against their character and their personality?
Yeah.
Or thirdly, Adam, they did it because they were genuinely prophets or messengers of God. And we will of course say they were genuine prophets and messengers of God. And really, that's the only one that stands up.
Okay, so quick thing on deluded. Deluded, as far as I understand it, is continuing to believe something when it's been shown to be not the case. Okay, that's what deluded is. But of course, he's missed the other option, which is they were simply mistaken. Because they either say, hey, they deluded, hey, they were liars, or it was the case that what they did was true. No, it can also be the case. The fourth option is they were simply mistaken. And that's the strongest option, and of course the one they don't do. And he's not the only one who does this, by the way. Redbeard Hamza does this as well, says there's only three options. That's not true. But it's easier for them to go with those three options because the fourth option is much harder for them to argue against.
Okay, I don't really know what kind of a point he's making here. For me, this is just empty, vacuous waffle. This is...
No, so his idea here is... Okay, so let me summarize it. He might say more, but the summary is, hey, the third proof is that there were all these messengers, and it can't be, according to him, that they were deluded or they were simply altruistic. It must be that they were informed by God, therefore God exists. And to me, this is the weakest argument so far. The other two are not strong, but this by far, to me, is the weakest of the three so far.
Yeah.
It doesn't follow that because there were multiple people that spoke about different gods, by the way. He doesn't say that. He makes it appear, or he infers, or he doesn't say that, in fact, all these messages weren't talking about Allah. Messengers all over the world have talked about various gods since the beginning of people talking about gods. But you can't infer from that a God exists. It's a non sequitur. Just because people talk about it doesn't mean or prove that God exists. So very, very weak argument, this.
Okay, you've said it, yeah.
To the argument, I would suggest.
Well, I think people can do good deeds for many different reasons, and I think surely one of the best quote would be, do unto others as you would wish to have done to you.
Is that a biblical quotation?
It could well be, but
it sounds biblical to me.
A very good philosophical point of view to take as well.
Okay, it is, I think, probably a biblical quotation, in which case, you see, the point is, although a lot of people today are atheists and agnostics like yourself, or humanists, which is essentially the same thing,
No. What is this guy? What is the education level of this person? I sometimes wonder. There is so much like ridiculous stuff coming out of his mouth. It's unbelievable. Sometimes it's just like there's verbal diarrhea, and he just carries on talking and talking and talking. This is total nonsense. I don't know what he's why he says these really mindless, thoughtless things.
I think stops because he's got a worldview that everything emanates from Islam, and anything that's good must have come from Islam, and that's kind of the point that he's inferring. Hey, well, do good unto others didn't come from the Bible; it predated the Bible anyway. So he's mistaken on that. But even if he wasn't, the ideas that are in the Bible, non-religious people have had. So, because he's trying to go, well, in a sense, and he's not saying it directly, but hey, all these good things come from the Bible. Could man have come about these things without the Bible? And the answer is, of course, yes. There's nothing in there that's unique about these moral precepts or ideas or thoughts that requires you to be religious.
Yeah. And okay, I don't know if we need to go into this because somebody's commenting on the golden rule. I think everybody knows what the golden rule is and what the problems are, so I don't think we need to go into this. There's so many things that you can say or that you cannot say, and that you can, why it is not a good idea. There's so many things, so we're just going to leave it at that. So yeah, let's just continue.
A lot of the ideas are based on Judeo-Christian Islamic teachings today. This is the point, really.
No, there are no Islamic teachings in Europe in the culture. Quite the contrary. What we have is, yes, we have the Judeo-Christian, let's say, culture somehow in the background, but that's about it. There is no Muslim culture in our in Europe, in the heritage. We don't have all this. We used to have the Christian form of misogyny. We used to have a lot of problems like with burning witches and being like very radical towards non-believers and things like that. But it's not like in Islam, where if you leave something, you're not automatically killed. There's a lot of differences. So claiming now that there is some sort of an Islamic heritage in Europe, that's ludicrous.
Yeah, and you'd have to ask him what he means by that anyway. So we've got to keep asking, because they make broad generalistic statements which they don't back up, they don't give evidence for. And again, the question is, what do you mean by that? Why should I accept that statement or that claim?
Yeah. Oh boy.
So even people who are atheists and agnostics have some sort of a Christian, Islamic, Jewish basis.
Surely their philosophy or their point of view is something which they've reasoned themselves to arrive at through their own intellect, rather than being told it. You're saying that they found it out for themselves?
No.
Okay, I think this is incredibly weak. I think what we need to point out, when we are saying Judeo-Christian cultural values or something, we're not talking about what it says in the Bible. We're not talking about what everybody is saying based on the Bible or from the Torah or something, because that would be like detrimental. What we're saying is what has been used and what has been filtered and what has been taken from those little pieces, like don't lie, don't kill, don't do this, don't keep slaves and things like that. That is the opposite of what you find in the Bible and the Torah, because there you are encouraged to keep slaves. There you are encouraged to lie. There you are encouraged to do all these horrible things, to even, tell somebody else if your parents don't believe and things like that. Those are horrible things. We don't use those. So you can't say that the basis is Christian or Judeo or whatever. No, it is not. What is happening is that we have seen things that were horrible in these teachings and have done away with them, and what is left is what we are taking now. But that's about it. So to say that there is a basis there, no.
I think what they're trying to claim, Stops, and I agree with you, is that they're trying to claim, okay, you guys are borrowing from our view, right? Because we had it way before you. Well, that's questionable, but even if that were the case, it's not something that they could prove is exclusive to religion. And even if we, quote, did borrow it, it just shows that we have the ability to analyze these things and establish which of these are good and which are bad. And if you're a theist, that's much harder for you, because you've got to cherry pick and ignore the evil bits, or you've got to try and say, well, they don't really apply today. And that's
Yeah.
either way you go as a theist, that's a difficult bar to overcome.
Exactly. So, yeah. Okay, if he were to approach me, I would slap him silly. But what can you do?
Oh, I'm not saying
Rather
they've
than being taught or tutored into it.
No, I'm not saying they've found out for themselves. I beg your pardon. I'm not saying they've been tutored into it or forced into it. What I'm saying is that although people may claim to have found out themselves, there is some Islamic, Judeo-Christian background to it, although they may not accept it.
But don't you think that could just be like some kind of ingrained brainwashing over the centuries or something?
Okay, that's possible, but nevertheless, there is some basis to it. This is what I'm suggesting.
Stop there, stop. Okay, so this is where this guy is a bit disingenuous, right? This is where the guy's disingenuous. So you got to pay close attention, right? If you're watching this, you pay close attention, because he's made a claim. The guy's responded. He's even acknowledged that it's possible, and then he's just carried on to say, no, but I still think there is. At this point, you've got to highlight that. You've got to work out the cultures around the world that have never had or didn't have access or interactions with Christians or Muslims or whatever, right? Yeah. And they also believe many of the same things, right? Don't kill everybody around you, don't rape police, whatever it might be. Where did they get it from? If they didn't get it directly from Christians or Muslims, your claim is undermined. But the fact that the guy brings the argument and then he just goes, no, but I'm still claiming it. That's where you've got to point it. Hang on a moment. Either your claim is true or it's false. I've presented something. You've acknowledged that I've given you something that puts into question or rebuts at least your claim, and you're just claiming that it is the case. Let's find out if you're an honest interlocutor at this point. Because he's got a script. I mean, if you watch all the videos, this guy's got a script, and he just follows it, right? And he doesn't look like he'll be taken off the path. So if you and I had to critique this guy, he'd be all at sea, right? He would be up the creek without a paddle, because he's got a script that he runs through, and he doesn't encounter people that will challenge him at a much more nuanced level.
Yeah. And this is why I started laughing when I heard this. Even before you said, "Whoa, stop!" I stopped it already because I heard this. This was quite funny.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, the last piece of evidence I would suggest, really, Adam, this is the strongest piece of evidence, is that these messengers of God came with miracles to show they were indeed sent by God. They came with miracles.
Okay, stop there. Stop there.
Oh dear.
This. I don't know which is weaker, to be honest. The third quote unquote proof or the fourth one. Both of these are by far the weakest of the lot. If there's some teleological design, or if if the universe was created by a God, I mean, that's plausible. It's not impossible, right? It's definitely plausible. But these two are far less plausible. So it also goes to this guy's thinking. But because his mind is pre-programmed to, miracles either can or did happen, his view is that that's the most, and for the rest of us, that's where his skepticism and critical thinking, is just not in operation. The bias in favor of a miracle, for him to say that's the strongest evidence, that in and of itself tells us a lot about his level of, bias and favoring that particular view.
Yep. Last prophet, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, came with a miracle which is as great as the miracles given to earlier prophets, if not greater. And this miracle is a book called the Quran.
Okay, according to the standard narrative, this was written by a god. So Prophet Muhammad did not come with this book. He just parroted what he was told. So it has nothing to do with Muhammad. He was just a stupid idiot who couldn't read or write, totally uneducated. And somebody came to him and said, you have to say, you need to kill apostates. So he says, you need to kill apostates. And everybody says, wow, this is so brilliant. No, it's not. It's just parroting something. If this is the standard narrative. I don't believe it, okay? But this is the standard narrative that we get from Muslims. So even using the standard narrative that we get from Muslims, this is already wrong.
But also their position is that, hey, he was this illiterate merchant. He couldn't have come up with this. This is also part of the miraculous claim. But if we examine what a miracle is, some extraordinary event that is unlikely or impossible through natural means, and we examine the book or the man's life that brought the book and the claims that are made about them, they don't stack up. So to us, to me, it's interesting, right? To me, the Quran is, quote, evidence against Allah existing. When I read the
Yeah.
Quran, based on the claims that are
Exactly.
made, the Quran is one of the strongest evidences, to use their term, against Allah.
No, this is crazy, really.
But
I don't
fascinating,
know.
right?
Okay.
I can think it's an evidence against Allah, and he thinks it's one of
Yes.
the strongest evidence in his favor. Obviously,
But
one of us is right and one of us is wrong. How do we establish that? He's got to
Okay, I
present the
can
evidence from this
provide
book.
exactly. I can provide the points. I can provide real evidence to show that he is wrong, but he is not able to. All he can say is, yeah, but there are so many rhetorical devices. Well, so has everybody book. I gave you this wonderful prescription from a doctor where each line had a word which was one letter longer than the last one, from 1 to 20, and the whole thing made sense. Now, that you cannot repeat. You cannot repeat that in Arabic at all. And this you can call a miracle because it cannot be repeated, and it's absolutely down to human creativity. And this is the difference. So you can't do this. I mean, if I look at the Quran, it's just gibberish in a lot of places. And to say that this is a miracle, that's a huge claim.
Okay. You've obviously heard of the Quran.
Absolutely, yeah, of course.
Okay, fine. Okay. Right. This book, the Quran, is a very, very, very powerful book.
not.
Okay. For a number of
Well, it depends. It depends whom you hit when you throw it, but the rest is not powerful at all. There's nothing special about the Quran. There's nothing new in there. There's nothing what I would say, wow, I've never heard that before. So the opposite is the case. It copies everything from others and it gets it wrong. And then it's full of I don't know, there's full of contradictions, full of mistakes, full of inconsistencies, full of this. And what the hell are you talking about?
But also stops. The other thing is, how do we judge the Quran, right? You can't judge it by the Quran itself. That would be tautologous or circular. So you have to look at the claims that are made and then go outside of the Quran, look at what we understand about reality. What claims are we making that we could agree is objectively the case or likely to be objectively the case? Maybe the earth going around the sun, which the Quran gets wrong as well. Those sort of things. And that's the way we could judge some of these things, right? This subjective criteria, as you pointed out, or bring a verse like it, that's entirely subjective. Because somebody could write their book, they could come up with their own criteria that neatly avoids or excludes anything else that could be out there. So that's not an objective criteria. But when the book makes claims about reality that we can test independent of the Quran, now we've got a criteria we can use. And whenever we look at that, the Quran fails miserably in every respect.
Exactly.
reasons. Number one, Adam, it's a powerful book. It's a powerful book because of the eloquence, the language, the style, and the truthfulness of the message within it. Okay. Okay, that's what I would suggest in the Arabic language.
So three of those stops. Three of those are, as we said, subjective, and the fourth one, truth. If truth comports with reality or represents reality, then that's false. So the first three are, if we were extremely charitable, we'd say they're subjective, in which case we could bring up criteria to say that's not the case, that's not eloquent, et cetera, et cetera. But the bigger one, the knockdown, is the truth one. Does this represent reality? And our view is clearly not. He thinks it does. And that's where we could actually have a substantive discussion, because the subjectivity, unless he can convince me of why I should accept his criteria, the other three don't get off the ground.
Yeah.
Now, unless you can speak Arabic, you wouldn't be able to see this. I assume you can't speak Arabic.
Not really, no.
No, you can't. You're English yourself?
I am, yes.
English from London?
Yeah.
Basically from London. Okay, fine. English. Okay, fine. No problem, Adam. You can't see this. However, what you will be able to see, Adam, is the Quran, as it says on this leaflet here. The Quran is a book which is 1,400 years old. Okay, as is on the leaflet here, and this is something accepted by everyone. Jews, Christians, atheists agree that the Quran has not changed.
No.
Yeah.
Obviously, this was done years ago.
Nobody, not even Muslims, agree anymore. What are you talking about? But it shows you, like, the dogma, the way that his brain is wired is so single file and following the script down the middle without any variance left or right. There is no way that he's able to say, well, maybe not all of them, but the most of them. No, it's absolute claims. And the danger of absolute claims is they can be shown to be absolutely wrong. And this is exactly what's happening. So, yeah. And exactly why So Religious is here, and he says the must speak Arabic claim. I mean, that is so stupid. That is another piece of evidence that shows that this is not a God.
But exactly, that works against them. Because if God's message was for everybody, then clearly this would be so miraculous in every language. And are they saying that God cannot do that, in which case he's not omnipotent, or he can do it and he cared not to do it? Instead, he brought it forth in a language that a vanishingly small amount of people on the planet can understand, and all the translations are very unimpressive, in which case he only wants it for a few people, and that contradicts the claim that it's for everybody. Whichever way you look at this doesn't work out well for them.
Plus, it says that it's a message for everyone. Well, I have not been given the competence in the language. So he's issuing a message in a language that I don't understand. So what's the point of giving the language?
And could
That's stupid.
And the only thing we have to ask is, could God have given this message to every human such that they all receive the same message, in which case they then have the free will to reject or accept it, and they could be, if you have to be judged on this for some, reason that is unfathomable to me, then at least you'd have a criteria to judge them. Hey, everybody's seen it. They all understand it exactly the same, clearly, no interpretations. Can we imagine a God doing that? Well, of course, the answer is yes. Did he do that? No. Why not, Mr. Muslim? And now you watch the excuses attempt to come forward.
No, sure, yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay. And now, they may not like what it says, and obviously they don't believe in it, otherwise they'd be Muslims. However...
No. I can believe that something is true without taking it on as my only view or my sort of worldview. No, just because something is true, it's also stupid.
They agree the Quran has not changed for 1400 years, which is the time of revelation. Okay, the time it started on the earth. The Quran today, the Quran, not just about today, but the Quran contains lots of scientific statements, scientifically accurate statements. For example, there is embryology in the Quran. Do you know what embryology is?
Now, people need to understand, this is something that a lot of people get wrong. Embryology is not just the beginning 2 weeks or something. Embryology is about the creation of a human being, complete with kidneys, with cartilage, with a thyroid gland, with kidneys, with liver, with spleen, with everything. This is what embryology is, the explanation of everything in the human body. If you leave something out, if you leave out the creation of the brain, how this works, this is no longer embryology. Then it's selective components of how a human is created. And this is a huge mistake that people make. They let themselves get roped in, and then they are discussing embryology. We need to nip this in the bud and say there is nothing even close to embryology in the Quran. And then we can go to the finer points and say that in chapter 23, all it does is just talk about creation, God creation, supernatural, whatever. And then we can point out the mistakes. But immediately say embryology, no, forget about it. That's the number one thing. That's a big, favorite point of mine.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Which is how a baby forms inside the womb of its mother. Yeah. The Quran also contains a description of how the universe started, with one initial separation of the heavens and the earth, which today is termed the Big Bang Theory. Okay. No, mentioned in the Quran. The Quran also describes how the
Again,
none of this is true.
He relies on his interlocutor never having read the Quran. All we have to do is say to him, where does it say that? Let's read the verse. Right? Whenever a Muslim apologist in particular makes a claim that you're not sure of, you think, okay, I'm not, ask them to bring up the verse. Stop bringing it up now if you wanted to, but it certainly doesn't. You can't even infer that reasonably. If it says the heavens and the earth were split asunder, or words to that effect, then that is demonstrably false. Because the earth wasn't around at that stage. We've been through this millions of times. Right? So these are terrible claims, but we just need to get them to read the verses. Do not accept on face value any apologist claims that you're unsure of. In fact, be very skeptical of it and get them to give you the evidence.
Any claim,
the universe is expanding. Yeah. The Quran also describes how...
Universe is expanding. No, the universe is expanding, but the Quran does not say the universe is expanding. The universe is expansive, is the wording used in the Quran. To change it from being expansive, which is vast, huge, humongous, or whatever, into a verb, that Allah is expanding the universe, that's not only disingenuous, that's plain dishonest. And changing
And that
the
only
words of the
happened in
Quran.
recent translations, right after
Yeah.
1929.
Yeah.
So, and then that was interestingly enough after Edwin Hubble demonstrated that the Earth was, along with collaborators, that the universe was expanding. Suddenly, then
Yeah.
it changed from vast expanse to expanding or expanders. Interesting, that isn't it?
Well, it first changed into continuously or constantly, and then when in '96 they found out that this is wrong, then they had scrambled to change all that to take out the word constantly, or continuously or whatever, because that was now wrong. So they have to constantly change the Quran according to the latest findings of what we find in cosmology. So yeah,
Yeah,
so it's
especially if you're going to
stupid.
go with this sort of claim, right? Which is why people like Tortoise don't go with this anymore, because you've refuted them and others have as well. So they realize that trying to bring science from the Quran is like just a death sentence for the, more of a
Yeah.
death sentence for Islam. But people like this unsophisticated fellow here still want to do this, but they'll only do it against interlocutors that don't really know anything about this. You and I would just take this apart. This guy doesn't know it about it, so he gets away with making these vacuous claims.
Well, the magnitude of the error here is 10,000 million years. So it's quite a bit.
The sun and the moon swim in their orbits, which is giving some indication of how gravity works and the
No,
presence of what today are called
You really want to go and talk about this? Come on.
well, the sun and the moon going in their orbits, is unscientific and shows the Quran is mistaken. So you really don't want to go
Yeah.
with that. If you can infer that there's something with gravity there, well, the Earth does that itself. It's true that, at least the moon going around the Earth does infer that, but the sun is swimming in an orbit, and whatever orbit it has, we've only found that out recently. Now they want to try and tag that on. No. The Earth and the moon go around the sun, and the Earth goes around. The moon goes around the Earth. Right? So yes, there's gravity involved there, but that's not the claim. The claim is that this is what's happening, and that's what the ancient, ignorant people thought, and that's obviously scientifically mistaken. So it
So
worked
it's
against
not only an indication. So it's not only not an indication, but it also shows how stupid a God would have to be to make this kind of a wording when trying to talk about gravity. So
Yeah, I think the only refutation,
Higgs.
the rebuttal that these guys try and give is, well, how will you speaking to those people of the time so they could understand? Okay, well, hang on a moment. If they understood something that was false and you're trying to speak to them, you want to correct them. And if they have to learn something or they don't understand and future generations do, well, then you can say that this God is being consistent. What you can't argue is that, hey, he was trying to speak to them at the time because they had essentially the wrong understanding. And so that's why he had to speak in this language. Well, that's fine. But then by today's standards, it's the wrong thing. So you can't have your cake and eat it. You can't say it was right in those days because that's what all people understood. And today we know better. No, that doesn't work. Get clear and have one particular thing. And even if the people of the time didn't, you could just claim that's a miracle, right? Because that's what they want to claim anyway. But in fact, it's the opposite. The people of the time wrote this book who didn't understand much about the world around them. And that's demonstrable as you read it. But don't try and claim that that's a miracle. It's exactly the opposite.
boson particles.
Yeah.
Okay. The Quran also describes how mountains are constructed. And the
wrong.
Quran also describes how the water cycle works.
No, it doesn't.
Pain receptors in the skin.
No, it
and
doesn't.
some others as well.
No, none of these are correct. In fact, the description of the mountains is so wrong, nothing in this is correct. Because mountains don't have a function. And this is definitely wrong. And mountains are not set by a supernatural being on top of the earth. They grow from out of the earth. It's the opposite. They are not driven into the ground like stakes. They grow from inside out. So this is completely wrong. And a lot of times it's along the fault lines where you have the biggest earthquakes. So don't talk to me that it stabilizes the earth. Water cycle, it mentions that rain comes down from the clouds. Well, wow, what a brilliant observation. Yeah, but that's all it does. There's nothing else. Pain receptors, nothing. No, this is all just jumping to conclusions, milking, massaging, and just quote mining certain words and then saying, you see, this is what this means. This is nonsense.
But surely there are lots of
Oh, let me take the next time I'm going to take a bio break, then I will just let you waffle on for the next point, okay?
books which explain these things without any reference to Muhammad or Allah.
Yes. No, there are no books which are 1400 years old.
Do you want to talk about that?
Sorry, what is that? Which part?
That there are no books that are 1400 years old.
Yeah, but 1400 years old, respect to what I missed the first bit there.
Fair point.
Yep.
Yeah. Fair point.
Yep.
No, he says there are no books that are 1400 years old.
No, but 1400, he's saying it in regards to some claim, though. I missed that.
Yes, this is why the book is so special, because there are no books that are 1400 years old.
Well, obviously there are, but he can't be saying that stops, even if we were super charitable. He must be saying there can't be any books that are 1400 years old that have this criteria, whatever it is. I missed that.
Scientific contents.
Oh, is that what he's saying?
So we have lots of them. I mean, look. I mean, Aristotle is the best example. That's where half the Quran comes from. So yeah, he described exactly what you find in the Quran. So there's a lot of books that are a lot older than the Quran.
Yeah, make accurate, assessments of the world around us.
Yeah.
Or more accurate.
Which are 1400 years old and have these statements.
Yeah.
And also, more importantly, or certainly as important, is the fact that this book, Adam, contains no statement which contradicts modern established science.
Okay, give me 2 minutes. You
I
talk.
think we've just shown. Yeah, I think we've just shown there that, in fact, every claim that's made there contradicts modern established science. So again, this guy's obviously just behind the curve. And okay, again, I don't mind being charitable. This is many years old. Maybe this guy's updated these ideas and he doesn't come with us. I would, if I was a betting man, I'd bet that he'd still be using the same thing and hoping that his interlocutors don't know any of these things. He's going to make these claims, not provide the verses. That's what an honest Dawah guy would do. Hey, here's this wonderful book. Let me show you what it says. Because here's the thing. If the book was incredibly accurate, Muslims would be walking around with this book open, showing everybody how incredible it was that this book talked about quantum mechanics and in fine detail with these words or whatever it is, or special relativity. They'd be going around showing you how accurate a book this is. The fact that he makes these claims and doesn't show the verses should, if you're thinking critically, have you wondering. There should be a red flag there. And instead, obviously, he's a member of the public, so I can't be too hard on him. But this guy's just taking that what this guy is saying does in fact match reality. And all we have to do is ask again, can you show me the verse? Show me the evidence. I don't accept that. I don't believe that these books accurately represent science or the world around us. They accurately represent only what the people in their ignorance knew at the time, which wasn't a lot. And so I think based on that, we shouldn't accept this. We should be entirely skeptical. But again, this guy is very amenable, the interlocutor here, to accepting these claims. But that's only because
And I'm always sorry that it never happens to me that I bump into these guys.
Exactly. I would say the same. I wish I'd speak to this particular guy. But I'd make sure I had a camera on, and I'd make sure that goes on the internet. Because they're obviously selecting the ones, right? Do they select the ones where he's shown to be entirely mistaken, or he comes across a strong interlocutor, or is his selection criteria simply for people that he thinks are not strong interlocutors, so that it's more of a propaganda piece rather than an honest Dawah conversation?
Yeah, exactly.
This book, the Quran, does not contain a single.
For that, but I'm sure you're probably right.
Yes, it does not contain a single statement which
Sorry?
I'm sure you're probably right. Okay.
Yeah.
contradicts modern
don't
established
accept that
science.
people's extraordinary claims are probably right. If they're probably right, then you should consider being a Muslim. So that's a mistake. You should have a skeptical mind going, no, I don't accept that. Show me the evidence. Let's see how closely your claim matches reality.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course we wouldn't be put onto YouTube. That's why Rob just said we make sure that you have your own camera there, because they would definitely not put them.
And you can, of course, check this out. Okay, the Quran is a book that's easy to memorize and millions of people have done so.
Yeah.
Estimates are at least 10 million people have memorized the Quran apart, which means, Adam, that if somebody was to produce a new book and call it the Quran and change even one word in this book, millions and millions of people all over the world would say this is not the Quran.
Okay, there's two problems here.
Yeah, go on. You go first.
Because the first thing is 10 million people, the estimate, and this is the funny thing, this shows you how dishonest this is. 10 million people, the estimate is for all times, okay, over the last 1400 years. So these people, they are not alive today. So these millions and millions of people, there's very few today. There are not so many. There's maybe 500,000 today that can still do this. The way that Zakir Naik, Ahmed, what was his name, Didat, Ahmed Didat, and Zakir Naik can do. Those people are dying out because people are not so much into this anymore because they realize that just learning the Quran is not so great. So if you were to create a new Quran today, it would definitely not be the same, and it would definitely have variants because people remember different things. I mean, we all know Chinese whispers. We all know how fallible the human brain is. And we all know that the Quran, even the way that it exists today, has thousands of mistakes and variants and things like that. So don't tell, this is a stupid claim, actually, if you just think about it.
Yeah, but also, there's a couple of other things. One is that, it doesn't matter how many people memorize. All that tells you is that human beings can remember certain things. And you can make some things easier, some things more difficult to memorize. That doesn't mean that they're true, and certainly doesn't mean that it comes from a God. So it doesn't follow that if part of your claim is that, hey, one of the miraculous things is all these people can memorize. No, that's not miraculous. It just shows that human beings can remember certain things, especially if it's drilled into them from a very young age in madrasas and elsewhere, and they are beaten. And physical violence, and we've seen this, right? Physical violence is involved when they make mistakes, right? The brain will try and protect the body, and so what it will do is then try to remember this so that you avoid being, hurt, given pain, and so forth.
And the thing is, what happens, because there are people who have memorized the Bible. Now what? Are we in a competition now? Which one is better? How does that work? So that's not going to get you very far.
Yeah. And the Quran has to be in Arabic, of course. So they would...
Excuse me? Why does the Quran have to be in Arabic? Of course. There's only a couple of people who have actually studied ancient Arabic, because the only reason that you would do that is to read the Quran. So not many people have. So we're talking about 0.000% of the people today who have actually studied ancient Arabic or Quranic Arabic. So why would it have to be in Arabic? Of course. That is showing the incompetence of this creator God, who would, if it were omnipotent and merciful and could do things and would care about people, not do this, but give everybody their own version of a Quran or create people with one language. So you've just shot yourself in the foot once again. Yeah.
But also the person who's listening should ask, well, why should that be the case, right? If you're a curious or a skeptical person, you go, why does it have to be in Arabic? Given that, as you pointed out, virtually the entire population doesn't understand ancient Arabic, only understands a variant of Arabic. Why should that? Do you want to get the message to only a small people, a number of people, accurately, or to the entire population? What does the book itself say? Oh, well, it depends how you see that, right? Some people want to claim that there's a clear message only for Muslims. Well, that's a bit problematic, because they're just saying it isn't meant for everybody else. Or it is a clear message for everybody, in which case, why would you have it in one of the most obscure languages in the world?
Would say this book is not the Quran. It might be similar to the Quran, but it's not exactly the Quran, because we know it off by heart, and it's not the same.
Sure, yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
Make sense?
Absolutely, yeah. Yep.
No,
The Quran was given to a man, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who could neither read nor write. And this adds to the miraculousness of the Quran. The words have the effect of changing people's lives.
Yeah, we're both laughing about that. Well, firstly, that hasn't been demonstrated to be the case, but let's be charitable and assume that it was the case. What that shows is that an ignorant man can learn something, be told something whose brain isn't necessarily critical, and he can repeat it. That doesn't show that it's miraculous. It just shows his fallible nature, actually. So that claim works against you, not for you.
Lives forever, Adam, this book.
Adam.
This book has got no contradictions in it,
Adam?
even though it was revealed a little bit at a time
Adam?
over a 23-year period.
Adam?
And the fact that it was revealed a little bit at a time can be seen by the chronology within the Quran. There's a time.
What?
There is no
Did he
chronology.
say the chronology? No, exactly.
What
There is no
chronology?
chronology. It's
Time frame
entirely
in the Quran.
arbitrary.
Okay, that-
Stop there, Mohammed. Stop. I mean, the Quran is done entirely arbitrarily. It doesn't follow a chronology, which makes it actually kind of worse than other books. Most books have a start, middle, and end that a human being can follow, which is what you would expect a God to do if he wants to communicate, such that his human beings can follow along. But here, this is arbitrarily, longest verse to shortest verse in all kinds of, just random ways. They don't follow in a sequence. People have obviously tried to do that to get the book into sequence, but that's something that it's God's job to do that rather than have it the way it is. That's another point against the book.
One thing that I just forgot to mention is when he said this is an Arabic, well, which Arabic are we talking about? Remember that all of a sudden now, when there are variants popping up, now they need to find excuses. So they're saying, well, these are just variants in the dialect. Yeah, well, excuse me. The Quran says that it's in pure Arabic. And if it is a dialect, which dialect is the Arabic in? So if a guy from Morocco speaking Arabic and a guy from Oman speaking Arabic write the Quran, this will be a very different book because they speak different versions of Arabic. So they will remember it differently. So you will not recognize this anymore. So there's a lot of factors, if you really dig into this a little bit, that will show that this is absolute, total, utter nonsense.
But it also refutes his
That's your-
claim that everybody around the world would be able to correct each other. They wouldn't.
Yes, they wouldn't. No, they can't. Because they don't understand it. Even today, if you look at the Quran, the first sentence in the Quran, chapter 1, sentence number 1, already eliminates all of Islam. Because the basis is the Quran, and the Quran says it's come from a God, and chapter 1, sentence 1 says, in the name of a God. So it's no longer by a God, it's just in the name. Somebody else is quoting somebody else. You already have one point of error included in the Quran right from the beginning. Chapter 2, the first, very, very first sentence is not Arabic. It's ALM. This has nothing to do with Arabic. So people who are following this don't understand what this is. And then they're telling you, well, you need to speak Arabic to understand it. Well, even the people who speak Arabic don't know what this is. So what is the point of... So they're following a book they don't even understand. So don't give me this nonsense talk that you...
Shows you that.
Sorry, did I cut you off?
No, it's fine. I was just going to say my hypothesis is the opposite. That if there was a God and he sent this book down, he sent this down entirely to separate the wheat from the chaff, i.e. those who can think critically and those who are dogmatic and can't think critically. And if there was a God, then this book is a test for us, and we're going to go to, if this heaven is a good place, by the way, then we're going there, and these people are not, because it's asking us to use our brain, which they claim the book tells us to do anyway. And once we do that, we can see this book couldn't come from an all-knowing God that wants to send a clear, concise, complete, and error-free message. It contradicts that entirely. So if it is a test, then it's exactly the opposite test of what they're claiming, in which case they're going to be in deep water or hot fire or whatever the case is, and we're not. But thankfully, there's no good reasons to believe that this sort of a God exists anyway. And in fact, good reasons to think it does not.
Book, Adam, contains a challenge from God. And this, in the Quran, God says that if you, I'm obviously translating from the Arabic, God says if you have doubt in what we have revealed to our servant, that's Muhammad, peace be upon him, then produce a surah chapter like it. And
okay, stop. We've got to talk about it again. I know we've done it a million times, but firstly, it's a shifting of the burden of proof, so that's a fallacy. If I come to you and say, hey, this claim is fantastic, it's an amazing claim, and the way you have to, the only way it's falsifiable is for you to bring something like it or better than it. Now I'm shifting the evidence to you to refute this, which is fallacy. But more than that, again, this is just a subjective thing, right? How do you establish it? Now, if God really wanted us to, he would have said, hey, human beings, I tell you that your planet revolves around the sun. Humans have all, up until this point in history, have all thought the sun went around the earth. But I tell you, this is the case. And in time, you will be able to discover this, and you will know that my word is true. That's what a God would do if he wanted you to actually, because now there's an objective falsification criteria. The way this is, it's entirely subjective, and in my view, unfalsifiable.
Well, there's other problems. There's 5 huge problems which I've refuted, or which I've covered in the various videos again and again and again. So there's so many problems. You don't know what actually you're supposed to produce. You're not told what like it is. You don't get the criteria. You don't get any of the things that you need to do. And the worst thing is, after this, and this is the funny thing, because if normally they give you this claim, and then if I tell them, well, read the next sentence is, and if you try it, you will go to hell. Number one, you can't do it. Sorry, I forgot something. So number one, you can't do it, and number two, you will go to hell. So number one, if you can't do it, what is the challenge? If you are told, because then there is no way that you can ever be able to do it. You're never going to be able to convince anybody that this is something like it, whatever that may be, because you are told it's never going to be like that. And the second thing is you're going to be punished if you try. So, the whole thing is totally dishonest, and it's totally false and wrong, and it's against everything, and yet people think that this is so wow.
Yeah, that's the main thing, isn't it? Stops. Imagine somebody came to you and said, hey, the earth goes around the sun, and that's true. And, even if you try to look that up and say that it's not true, you'll be tortured or whatever the case is. There's no incentive to do it. And the claim is made that it's unfalsifiable. It just is the case. Instead of using a scientific approach and making a hypothesis and saying, hey, see if you can falsify this. And here's the criteria. It does exactly, as you pointed out, the opposite of that.
I need to bow out because the guy's coming back 3 and he's going to give me a call just now. So what are you doing later on tonight?
I'll be available up until 8, so we could maybe continue this a bit later on as a part 2. So again, thank you so much for hosting. Thanks for everybody who is listening in. Stops has to go, but I'm sure we can continue here. Make a note of the time stops. I can't see it. And we can do a part 2 when we finish this off at some point.
That's a pity you can't just continue, because this is going to be just a half an hour and I'll be done. But you're sitting in the car and you can't continue with starting and stopping.
No, I can't. No.
Waiting
just
around.
Give me a shout when you're done. And if I'm still on the road, we can continue where we left off. If I'm at home, we can continue either way. So just give us a shout, if you're done.
Okay.
Thanks to the people who are listening. Thank you for hosting on my channel, because I can't do it. And I'm sure we'll be back and finish part 2.
Next time, take a train.
Yeah, good idea.
All right, guys. Sorry about this. I know it's just getting interesting. We're just getting warmed up here. But we're going to continue this at a later date, and we're going to have part 2 ready. So how long have we been going now? For, I can't even remember. What does it say there? For 1 hour. Oh, it's exactly 1 hour. All right, then we'll carry on next time. Thank you, guys. And I need to remember that this was only 12 and a half minutes that we've covered of this video. Wow, we've talked 1 hour over 12 minutes of video. Guys, see you later. Thank you very much for being here, and I hope you enjoy what we're doing. We'll continue later. Cheerio, bye.
Bye.